All right, let's go ahead and get started. So welcome everybody to the Center for Dewey Studies Lunchtime Talk. I'm Matthew Brown. I'm the director of the Center for Dewey Studies, and it's my great pleasure today to welcome Jia Chen from Fudan University in Shanghai, China. Fudan is the home of one of our partner Dewey centers and one of the oldest. Wonderful work done there. And Professor Chen has also been visiting New York University this year, doing her research, which focuses on John Dewey and John Dewey's philosophy of art and aesthetics, and also the interaction between or the relationship between Dewey's work and Confucianism. Right? Without further ado, please welcome Jia Chen.
Okay, thank you. So I'm over
Yes, please.
to see. Okay. How's my voice sound? Is it good? Okay. Well, first of all, thank you, Professor Matt Brown, for a very nice invitation. And also for all of you who came here on the spot. I was worried a little bit of very like little people, and I thought it would be less. I like to see people in person, so there will be more communication. And I should say, let me see, let me get this one. Oops. Okay, just give me 1 minute. Yeah, for someone who studies, writes on, and also is very much influenced by John Dewey, coming all the way to SIU Dewey Center is like, in the words, learning the authentic Sudra, which was a phrase borrowed from one of the 4 Chinese classics, the Journey to the West, the monkey Sun Wukong. So I've come here for. So the purpose for my talk today is to show the power of John Dewey's vision of rhythm in the world and also in aesthetic life. I found a very limited discussion of Dewey's important views on rhythm in the literature. But I do think it was important. Now, in the book, The Philosophy of John Dewey, edited by Professor John McDermott in 1972. So here are the quotes from him. He said, in an anticipation of much of contemporary art, such as ready-made and fine art, Dewey writes that even a crude experience, if authentically an experience, is more fit to give a clue to the intrinsic nature of aesthetic experience than is an object already set up from another or from any other mode of experience. And then, according to the Professor McDermott, he says Dewey then works out the relationship between the rhythm of experience ordinarily undergone, and the achievement of the enhancements and consummations which characterize human living at its peak. So in this quote here, I think Professor McDermott already noticed very important the idea of the rhythm of everyday experience versus the enhancements, consummations. And also in another quotation from the same book, he said that the rhythm of how we experience is an aesthetic, having as its major characteristic the relationship between anticipation and consummation, yet having other perturbations as mischief, loss, boredom, and listlessness. So I think in my reading, I think when we talk about the rhythm, the Dewey's vision of rhythm, it can be read from several points of view. You can read it from materially, symbolically, physiologically, artistically, and I'm also welcome to hear from you there's some other way to read his view on rhythm. But for my talk today, I want to propose 2 readings of this concept of rhythm in Dewey, especially in his the late writings of aesthetics. Now, the first reading I want to propose is, I think Dewey, the notion of rhythm by Dewey deepens a major theme of him, which is the theme of continuity, with a subtle discussion of rhythmic variation. Now, for someone like me who teach Dewey's aesthetics, no words can be more convincing than showing an art example of Dewey to illustrate his aesthetic view. And here's what I'm going to show you now. Probably, I don't know, I should be seen all right, right? A masterpiece by Rembrandt. And this one, The Philosopher in Meditation, it was now housed in the Louvre in Paris. Now, Rembrandt is famous for using light and shadow to express the depth on his canvas, both in form as well as in emotion. So on this canvas, the brightest part actually is, as we will see on the left, and the face of the philosopher who's sitting by the window, around whose brightness we also see a darkness just on the diagonal shadow, the edge on the right, the bottom. As we can see, the philosopher sits there very well, judging from the painting, very calmly, while around him actually it lies an astonishing movement. And you will see in the middle a spiral staircase dominating the image points upward, while a door placed to the right of the philosopher points to a room below. So we can make a first reading of the image. You have a philosopher who meditates on, usually we say philosopher meditates on metaphysics, on above and on below, on the past, on the future, or we say on something, the heavenly, the truth, and also some more immediate things. While this, we will guess he may be on the right, the bottom, it's a servant or someone who is housekeeping in the place, is squatting on the ground to start a fire, taking care of the needs that is right away instead of far away, like a philosopher thinking. Now, obviously on the canvas, you will see the formal contrast, that is bright versus dark, meditation versus action, already suggests a division for the viewer. And for those of you who knows about the short history, the history of Western philosophy, by the hint from the title, The Philosopher, we can think that it suggests implies a long tradition in the history of Western philosophy. That is a dualism tradition. So by using that, we will see, I think it will help us to see the purpose that John Dewey in the first volume of his late the works, Experience in Nature, and in the preface in Experience in Nature, published in 1925, he made very clearly that the chief obstacle to a more effective criticism of current values lie in the traditional separation of nature and experience, which it is a purpose of this volume, which refers to experience and nature. So it is a purpose of this book, this volume, to replace by the idea of continuity. So the theme, John Dewey's theme, the continuity, is very important for him. Now, for Dewey, why it becomes a problem? Because to achieve this, the theme of the continuity, it's not that easy. It's not that easy. The way to achieve it actually requires overcoming the obstacles, the tensions. So for Dewey, we all know about his the philosophy of naturalistic empiricism. So for him, the living organism must fight in order to achieve the continuity between the living creature and the surrounding, or say the environment. The living creature must fight to restore the balance between its living environment and rebuild an orderly and harmonious relationship. So in the book that was 1934, which was after he published the Explanation Nature, that was volume 1 in the late works, and Art Experience is volume 10 in the late works. He said, here in Germ, a balance and harmony attained through rhythm. Equilibrium comes about not mechanically and inertly, but out of and because of tension. So, speak of tension, I think, let me illustrate a little bit here. What Dewey means here is, in order to achieve the continuity in philosophy as well as in more broad sense, this the naturalistic empiricism between the living organism and his or her environment. This process has never been smooth. There are always many kinds of adventures, and the ubiquitous resistance hinders the growth of organism. So you have to fight and to regain the order. And for a growing life, this recovery now is not simply a return to the previous continuity. Here comes very important. When you retrieve this, the reorder, the rebalance, the recovery is not simply a return to the previous continuity of life and nature, but rather an enrichment of life itself after experiencing differences and resistance. So, in this, the process of you losing, facing the obstacle, overcoming the obstacle, and regaining the balance and regaining the order, do we find a pattern of rhythm in it? So he says, all interactions that affect stability and order in the whirling flux of change are rhythms. Now, hereafter, I use the abbreviation AE, stands for art as experience. So with this, the new notion of rhythm comes in. I think we can have a subtle version of what Dewey always known as the transactions between human being and nature, transactional continuity. We can have a subtle version by including the notion rhythm in it. So a subtle version of this transactional continuity reads like this. A living creature shares with his environment the ordered relations. Because for Dewey, the ordered relation is something at the heart of rhythm, at the heart of rhythm. So, with these ordered relations and the rhythm, Dewey point out something that were related to our later, the second reading, which is something as a gem of art. He says, when the new rhythm comes after a break and a new energy regains, it bears within itself the germs of a consummation akin to the aesthetic. So for Dewey, he started with the biological, so I shall be the art experience, but also later work, the volume 10 was the same book, the art experience. So for Dewey, these biological commonplaces that we started with, how the creature relates, fights with the environment, all these things reach to the roots of aesthetic in experience. He said, because experience is the fulfillment of an organism in its struggles and achievements in a world of things. It is art in germ. It is art in germ. So, if allow me to wrap up the first reading, the reading one, that is, I think the notion of rhythm provides a more refined the reading of his important term, continuity. He was saying continuity is not something that just you keep on, something that you don't comes out smoothly. Rather, there was always the obstacle and the the tension, and you have to overcome these tensions in order to regain the balance. And there is definitely a pattern of the rhythm in the whole process. So the notion of rhythm depicts the expression of John Dewey's idea that we have the intrinsic needs for surviving for any creature, and the accumulation and conservation of the organism's energy comes in the whole process of transaction, and ultimately the realization of a consummatory experience can be found particularly in art. Now, we have talking about the art, but you might wonder, so what exactly is this art in germ found in these biological facts? And here comes the second reading of the notion of theme that I want to propose today. Now, the reading two is, I think, the notion of rhythm, demystify the origin of aesthetic experience. Here, we first actually encounter the issue of what exactly is John Dewey's definition of art, which to those who have read art experience but not more an appreciate. Sometimes I will often hear the criticism of Dewey was either not that clear about the definition of art, or he just lacks the giving any analytic definition of art. And well, I want to defend a little bit for Dewey here. In Experience and Nature, the late works, volume 1, Dewey warned us as the following. It was in the chapter 9, Culture, Nature, and Art, which was always regarded as a prelude to later the whole volume in art experience. So in Experience and Nature, Dewey pre-warned us. He said there are substantially but two alternatives when we came to think about the notion of art. Either art is a continuation by means of intelligent selection and arrangement of natural tendencies, of natural events. That's the first alternative. Or art is a peculiar addition to nature, spooning from something dwelling exclusively within the breast of man, whatever the name be given the latter. Now, if you read explanation, if you know the tradition of classical pragmatism, you will have no difficulty in identifying which is preferred by Dewey. The first one, art is a continuation. And I think here, when choosing the first one, Dewey's understanding of art is unconventional in two senses. First, I think Dewey's understanding of art differs from the traditional metaphysical aesthetics. I'm thinking here of the Platonical, the idea of art, whose assumption is that the abstract, transcendental beauty precedes the existence of art, and definitely Dewey is against that traditional metaphysical, the idea of art. But Dewey was also, in my reading, he also differs from modern aesthetics, which limits the notion of fine arts. And as we know from there was the article talk about the modern system of fine arts, and we know the 5 categories of fine arts actually came also at the late 18th century. For Dewey, this modern idea of fine arts was also a little bit too narrow for Dewey, which he thinks we shouldn't limit this notion of fine art to purely ornamental works of art. So for him, you will find that very interesting. On one side, he was thinking the art is much broader, and actually he said the difference between the ordinary experience and aesthetic experience is not in category, but rather in degree. So he's saying there was a continuity, or they share the same origin of ordinary experience and aesthetic experience. But at the same time, in the book Art Experience, he does also talk some of the quite a lot of the fine arts, especially the visual arts in terms of the painting. So he was influenced by the A.C. Barnes, and so he was able to have the exposure to, especially to the Impressionism and Post-Impressionism. Okay, now as we know this, the Dewey's understanding of art, how is all this related to the topic of rhythm? In Art Experience, Chapter 7, the title is The Natural History of Form. That is where his view about the rhythm in art comes in. Well, first, let's look at the title, The Natural History of Form. He gives the two definitions. He said form was something, if in general, we can say it's a mode of interaction. And form, particularly in art, for Dewey, is refers to a completeness of relation with a chosen medium. So it could be the pitch, the music notes. Then there will be the rhythm in music. It can be the shape, the color, the lines. Then it could be then it refers to the rhythm or the form in painting. And now here comes to a very crucial and something I always find very attracted by it. The following passage. For Dewey, he said if we would try to trace the source of the form in art, we will find that the very first characteristic of the environing world that makes possible the existence of artistic form is rhythm. Now, I will get in detail into that. He said, well, there is definitely rhythm in nature before poetry, painting, architecture, and music exists. So if we do a analysis of this passage, it seems he had a sequence here. There's rhythm in nature before all the art. So we have the rhythm in nature. We have rhythm in art. And because for Dewey, the notion of aesthetic experience is at the center, so I put also the rhythm in experience in nature and in art. Now, for this, I say it's a sequence because it was also a step-by-step, the process. It's an action. And also using Dewey's word, this is an operation. From rhythm in nature, rhythm experience, rhythm in art. Now, I want to get deep into this step-by-step process by interpreting these three step-by-steps with the following, what I think was at the heart, which is the rhythm in nature he was describing a perception, the human's perception of natural rhythms. We have seen the sunset, the sunrise, sunset, the alteration of the four seasons, and all the natural rhythm. That's the perception. And the rhythm in experience refers to some of the human conscious engagement, whereas the final stage is the artistic transformation. Now, for the bottom, the three I should be step-by-step process. I want to skip the first one because that was more obvious. I want to elaborate a little bit about the second and third one. Now, when we all have as a living human being, we all perceive in our daily life the rhythm of in the natural experience. But what Dewey, I think, tries for us to see or advise us to see is He said the rhythm of the loss of integration within current environment and the recover of union, or putting another way, that's the rhythm of the natural perception, not only persists in man, but comes conscious with him. Its conditions are material, out of which the term or the forms proposes. The form proposes. Now, I think if you agree with me, if when he said he becomes conscious with him, we can read a little bit Hegelian idea of here. That is, your perception not is just something that you counter. Once you're aware of it, or once you're conscious of it, there's a human, very important intellectual participation involved in this conscious perception. There is a difference between just seeing and conscious experiencing. Now I'm calling back here just a little bit before the lunchtime, the phrase, I hear you, but I don't understand you. Now here is, I see it, but I'm not consciously aware of it. So here are some of the difference here. Why the conscious is so important? Because, again, the long quote from John Dewey, because sooner or later, once the consciousness comes into the mind and we are transacting with the nature, with the environment, the participation of man in nature's rhythms, a partnership much more intimate than is any observation of them for purposes of knowledge, would induce him to impose rhythm on the change where they did not appear. The portioned reed, the stretched string, and taut skin render the measures of action conscious through sonance dance. Now that becomes a little bit kind of difficult. Let me explain a bit. So for Dewey, how do we know this? We are conscious of something. Dewey said, emotion is a conscious sign of a break. It is a break from the ordinary routine experience. It is also a conscious sign of a possibility of the birth of the making of art. He said, for our ordinary people, sometimes when we become conscious of something, because we are lack of enough skill, the artistic skill, or we are lack of the patience. Sometimes we are turned away from those aesthetic moment, exciting moment. But for the artists, because of the skill they have and because of the sensitivity, when those emotional moment comes up, they knows it and they seize it and they dive into it in order to make it much more the emotion more explicit and make it into a work of art by using all various kinds of the materials they have. So here, what Dewey is saying is the human perception of natural rhythm is neither a passive reception of impressions, nor merely a scientific inquiry into rhythm as a physical attribute of nature. Because he was saying here, it will be more intimate than is any observation of them for purpose of knowledge. So he was talking something more than just epistemological understanding or inquiry of nature's of the rhythm in nature. So it was rather it involves human beings as an active sentiment organisms to participate in these natural rhythms, thereby imprinting the rhythms indelible mark upon the very fabric of human lived experience. Now, before I turn to the next step, I want to also say something about the change here. So here I highlight and also highlight in red the imposed rhythm on change where they did not appear. In other words, in the process of the participation, humans' conscious participation with rhythm in nature, something new, some new change emerges. Something originally impossible, but somehow transcends nature in itself. And it is this kind of new change that represents the creative activity of human beings living with nature and constitutes the very inevitability of the origin of art. And that leads us to the step-by-step, the third step, which is we're starting from the perception of naturalism. Then we move to this the consciousness of the participation. Now we come to the part, the artistic transformation. Dewey says, in that chapter, man no longer conformed his activities of necessity to the rhythmic change of nature's cycles, but used those which necessity forced upon him to celebrate his relations to nature as if she had conferred upon him the freedom of nature. Now, what attracts me is the freedom of her realm. What attracts me is the free relationship, the freedom. And I think for Dewey, the free relationship is a very indispensable condition for artistic creation as well as for artistic rhythm. And the artistic rhythm is precisely the record of this activity of processing and fully expressing a certain regularity of change that initially attracts the perception, attracts the perception. Now, let me give you some examples to show the freedom both in technique, as we know, in the ancient Greek, the technique is actually the term that includes both before we have the division between science and art. Let me give you some examples of a freedom in technique and art. Now here, I should thank for my friend in Champaign, Eric. I think he probably is online, watching live the stream now. And there was something when I a couple of days ago when I talked to him in Champaign, say I'm coming to Carbondale, give this talk and talk about the subject. He gave me this a very interesting connection. That is the for those of you who know the Chinese the Taoist philosopher Zhuangzi from around the 4th century BCE, the story about these his cook, the story of the down cow. So the passage the story was talking about these how the notion of Tao and will be is influential in all this the way that the cook named Pao Ding. So he says when he was cutting up a cow for him, wherever he placed his hand, pushing his shoulders forward, with his foot firmly on the ground and pressing with his knee, there would be a ripping sound as the skin pulled off and as the knife sliced, all in a smooth rhythm. And the motion and the sound were like the ancient mulberry forest dances, or like the ancient blended notes music. So when the Lord Wen Hui asked the cook, so what was happening? The pouting, the cook said, well, what I follow is the Tao, by which one can master any skill. And I didn't put here, but there was also in the same story, he says, the cook says, I follow the natural lines, the great slots, passing through large spaces. Now I missed the ligaments and large bones, but we can see here how someone who was at the beginning doing all these things was very careful, but later once he follows the Tao, and also the nature lines, he starts to be very confident and become the master. As he said, we can master any skill. And I think there is definitely a freedom in this, the technique. So that's one example on the freedom in technique. Okay, another freedom in art. It's Jackson Pollock, the Autumn Rhythm, number 30. Was painted in 1915. It's housed in the Met. And this work's title suggests autumn rhythm, not only the month in which Jackson Pollock painted it was in October, but also an alignment with nature's constant flux. And actually, there was, when I was standing at Met in front of this, I was very attracted by this. Or it's difficult to articulate, but definitely you're moving with the rhythm of the brushes of Jackson Pollock. And I took that photo and also give a more close shot of some of the parts on this canvas. And I think probably Jackson Pollock among as far as so far, I think will be very I won't say easy, but a good example of seeing the freedom of the rhythm in the lines of his canvas and connected with the rhythm that we see in nature. Now, it would be difficult for some of the rhythm. Last week I was in Chicago. I was lucky to be able to catch before it ends the special exhibition in Art Institute of Chicago, the Matisse, the book, the jazz, the rhythms in color. It was all his cutting, the paper cutting. It was very nice, and also it was the first time, according to the website, that they show all the 12 the artworks, paper cuts in the book called The Jazz. I'm still working on it how to see if Dewey's the idea of the rhythm of art can help us to at least see, understand, or appreciate some of the more of the rhythms in not that obvious as in the Jackson Pollock. But I think at least when Dewey also says in chapter 8, he says when we talk about actually the rhythm of in art, we cannot take it too literally sometimes. It was more of it's called the holistic perception of art when we think about the rhythm in actual works, in actual art project. And my reading so far, I think what comes between the rhythm in nature and the rhythm of art, well, there is definitely a very important artistic leap involved. That's what I mean by Dewey was saying here is it requires the imagination, the artistic imagination, in order to be consciously participated, but not all the duplication of any of any rhythm in nature, and by creating something very different. So there's all the imagination involved here, and the imagination in art is an integration of continuity. Here again, that was my first reading, the continuity, the Jewish theme, and novelty. Now, we all know we're familiar with, again, from here at SIU, the Dewey Center, Professor Thomas Alexander. In his book on the John Dewey's Aesthetics, he said he had pointed out that that continuity in Dewey must involve an element of novelty, which is essential to Dewey's principle. Yet, this novelty cannot be viewed as an as an actual natural super-inject, as in Whitehead's theory. I think by based on Professor Alexander's comment here, I think what Dewey was doing here for this imagination and the rhythm moving from the rhythm nature and the rhythm in the art is Dewey did not follow the traditional way of mystifying artistic imagination in the history of aesthetics. If we know the German the tradition would talk, usually the imagination will be regarded as talent, genius. And I think to explain the source or the origin of art, and I think Dewey was not that to do this, the mystifying. Rather, he is demystifying. He quotes Coleridge's exemplastic to show that artistic imagination makes all elements into an integrated whole. And this integrated whole is not a simple superposition of the original elements. Now here we recall the beginning of my second reading, I presented you the pre-warning of Dewey. See, there's only two alternatives when it comes to the definition of art. Either it's a natural continuation or it's just something totally coming from inside. And for Dewey, the integrated whole is not anything a superposition of the original elements, but a symbol of the birth of a distant and strange thing, which is the realization of novelty and potential, but also a symbol of exploration towards a more suggestive world. So in artistic imagination, both novelty and continuity are combined. The meaning of previous experience, which for Dewey, that was always part of the continuity. The meaning of previous experience enters into people's current consciousness through imagination. And the process of this imagination of new and old, which is the current stimulus and the previous experience, is imagination, the process of the integration. And as the result, very important, the result is a new experience, So by doing this, a speculative theory without any imaginative space can only lead to mechanical experience. That's something that Dewey will warn us not going that way. While the enrichment of artistic imagination makes the artistic experience most directly and completely. So, to wrap up my second reading for the notion of rhythm, Dewey demystifies the transformation from rhythm in nature to rhythm in various arts, outlining, I want to say a metaphysics of art. I was thinking about, should I use that word? But I think as long as I make it clear, it's not the Platonic idea of a metaphysics, but it is a metaphysics in terms of it touches or it tries to explain what was the essence, the origin. So I will use this word to say outlining a metaphysics of art that centralize the creative intelligence. Now, let me see. Oops, there it is. Yes. As a conclusion, let's call back this image again. I started with the image, and actually by now I would say, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Taoist, the icon that you have the two parts, white, black, and white. And yes, yin and yang. And actually, if you take a look at the middle of the stairs, it was kind of reminds you of this, the yin and yang, the icon. Whereas we know in the Tao, the yin and yang, there's a black spot in the white part, and you have the white spot, a dot in the black part. And I started with this to introduce the idea of the dualism. It's kind of divided, but we know in the Taoism, it's trying to say there was always a changing interaction between the two parts, yin and yang. And I just love the one of the quotations which Drew was saying something about philosophy and art. Now he says, philosophy is said to begin in wonder and end in understanding. We all know the term philosophy, the love, the wisdom. Now, what would be the art? What would we say about the art? We think about this, the step by step, start from something we all know, the rhythmic nature, but through a leap of imagination, we get something, the new experience. Dewey made it very nicely. Art departs from what has been understood. It seems coming from ordinary experience, we all know, but it ends in wonder. And I think the greater the artwork is, the greater the artist is, the larger, the more freestyle of the imagination the art is, it provides us a greater wonder in the end. And that comes to the end of my talk. Thank you. Matt, should I stand here or?
You can stand or
Okay.
sit as you prefer.
Okay.
So, yeah, we got plenty of time for discussion, for questions and answers.
Try to get back to that picture.
If I can see.
The last one, yes.
So, yeah, if you have a question, just raise your hand or comment. If you're joining us on the live stream, you can just put a comment in the box and I'll see it. I can read it to our speaker. Is that a hand?
Oh, me?
Yeah, did I see it?
Oh, I'm
Oh, you just got
But I mean, well, okay, I can.
You have one? Okay.
I don't know, just like to start. So, what comes first, art or philosophy? I mean, maybe you mentioned, but
What comes first?
yeah.
The two. Well,
Or are they like so intertwined and you cannot even say
I think for Dewey,
for Dewey?
even what's more fundamental before the art and philosophy, that was just our experience. And for him, the experience comes from his so-called the do and undergo. Undergo is something that we are received by whatever we encounter. And do is something as an active human being, as a sensible human being. In response to what we are undergoing, we will making our action. And for Dewey, art and philosophy all comes after. It was a longer process of starting from the experience, which gives birth to philosophy, to science, to art, and the other social activities.
Well, you're convincing me that Dewey understood Taoism innately. Or maybe, I mean,
Well, he also went to China
yes.
For 2 years and 2 months.
But-
The book was published, the lecture was given after he came back from China.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. Because I was thinking about, correlative, the idea of correlative correspondence in Chinese. This idea of like as below to above. You spoke a little bit about this.
Low.
Okay, I'm
Maybe
not
more-
gonna be able to translate it backwards. This sort of metaphysical or cosmological idea in traditional China of all things being related from
Yeah.
the bottom to the top.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
You think like the human nature harmony.
Sure. Yes. From bottom to the top, and it seems like there's some of that is embedded in this idea of the rhythm of nature, human experience, creation of art.
Yeah.
You
Mhm.
see this as sort of parallel?
Yeah, I think there's definitely the human nature, the harmony.
Right.
And actually, the human nature harmony, you will see both in Confucianism and the Taoism. But in terms of the latter one, well, I would say in the case of Zhuangzi, he had the chapter in the book also called Zhuangzi of the equality of everything,
Of all things, yeah.
of a human being, of a creature, of a nature. So
Right.
I don't think that he will be say this
It's
not-
hierarchical.
yeah,
It's
not the hierarchy.
Yeah.
It's more of the relational equality.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just want to
Yeah.
go back to like my previous question because, like, I mean, why I ask this? Because the conclusion kind of suggests that the philosophy comes first. It said philosophy is said to be in wonder and end in understanding, and then art departs from from understanding and ends in wonder. So yeah, so I mean, this is why it inspired me to.
But what if art
Mm,
is like bigger than philosophy
yeah.
in this definition?
Yeah. Actually, now when I reread this, I think maybe we can also say something like reverse. Can we say art also begins in wonder? Yeah, I mean, I don't think Dewey is trying to also make an philosophy versus art. He will probably say, if we're buying his idea of the ordinary, everything starts with the daily life, something you are very familiar. And I think actually he was against the institutional idea of art. Sorry, an institutional idea of philosophy. You can be a farmer, and someone who in the other career, but still have this philosophical, this the spirit. Yeah.
I have a question about the rhythms of nature. So the most sort of obvious description, or the most clear descriptions of the rhythms of nature, have to do with the sort of biological level of nature.
Yes.
Do you think Dewey also thinks that does he think that rhythm emerges with biology, or does he think that there's rhythm sort of all the way down, like even at the physical level, nature is characterized in terms of rhythms?
All the way, I think when you say all the way down, what do you mean?
No, I guess I just mean does rhythm emerge on the scene of nature with biology, or is it prior? Is it a characteristic of the physical level as well?
And
That's an interesting question. Because I think that it's beyond nature. But I guess what does Dewey say?
well, in the first chapter of art experience, the life creature,
Yeah.
he definitely, I think he was more talking about the biological,
Right.
the sense. So he would say, we have a very animal need, and for the food and the other thing, and also more important for the human being, it's the survival, the existence. And you have to be able to adjust to the environment and find your way. And I think that was all biological, as well as I would say existential. The rhythm, the fight, and kind of you lose this the contact or lose the continuity, put yourself in a dangerous, but then you regain the strength and regain the order. That was biological. But when it came to the natural history of form, the passage where he said that the very first characteristic of the environing world that makes possible the existence of artistic form is rhythm. I think he was talking more about the natural one. Oh, but he also say the man's own life is affected by the rhythm of waking and sleeping, hungering and satiety, work and rest. So again, you have biological
Yeah.
the thing.
It's really the sort of the equilibrium, disequilibrium, it's the organism and environment. That's the rhythms of nature.
That's the rhythm of
They're
nature.
related. Okay,
Yeah.
that's helpful. Thank you.
Mm.
Yeah. So there's a question from the live stream
Okay.
from Jess Slister. She asks, well, first she thanks you for the John McDermott references, which
Okay.
were very helpful and interesting. But her question is about tension and its relation to rhythm. Could you explain more the role of tension, and not only in relation to rhythm, but also to the precarious and the stable, as that's discussed in Experience of Nature?
Okay. Tension relate to the
Yeah.
rhythm. Okay.
And she also wants to know, is all tension creative, right? Is tension
Interesting. Oh.
sort of inherently related to
That's
creativity?
good. That's well. Shall I stand? Can she hear me?
She can hear you. Yeah, yeah.
Oh.
Because this is also a camera.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know what to do. Oh, she can, and she can see me here.
Yeah, she can see that.
Oh, okay. Oh, I didn't know. I thought once I leave from that, I kind of be in a safe position. Oh, no.
We're safe.
Always I'm on the online. Okay, hi.
Always.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for the it's a good question, and it's something that I think I learned a lot from John Dewey, because I remember when I was studied at UI, once I showed my professor the painting from a landscape painting from the Asian China. It's ink wash painting, and the professor pointed out something. He said he find it interesting because there seems always a peacefulness if you look at those the Chinese landscape painting. Whereas if you to explore some of the landscape paintings in the West, and somehow he thinks there will be more kind of tension, the tension, anxiety in the West. And he was asking me, well, at that time I said it was for the Chinese, both Taoist and Confucian idea, there was a tension. It's a human nature relationship. In that sense, human being was, when he or she is in the nature, say climbing a mountain or standing by a riverside, there's not to try to fight against this nature, but rather it was more of be immersed into the whole nature, be immersed to nature. So my point is, at that time when I was studying, I didn't see how the tension was so important until I read Dewey. He says the tension was not something just happening. It was one of the conditions for you to be able to keep the balance. Well, first of all, it is the natural fact, because the journey is not smooth. You will always have undergone something. So it's not a smooth journey. It's just a fact that the tension comes everywhere. Second of all, now that's important for the tension in art. For those, I think, the great artists, once they find out the importance of attention, then they would, I think, intentionally create certain kind of tension. So you were asking the tension in if attention is creative. Well, I think Rembrandt, using this the stairs and using the light, the shadow, he definitely created a formal tension on the canvas to draw us to the to increase the expression of the canvas. So I think yes, first, so to sum up, tension is in Dewey sense, it's necessary, and those who can overcome the tension, those who can gain the energy and find actually the opportunity of further growth. And for the artists, yes, tension can be created. Yes.
You shared the Zhuangzi selection about cooking.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
The
And there was a part of that you did not include, where he talks about when he gets to a spot he takes this knife that has the infinite thinness, very thin,
Yeah.
and he sticks it between the fibers of the meat, and it all zip zaps and it falls apart, right? But he talks about when he gets to a spot that is difficult, when the tension rises, right? And he sits, right? And it's this example of perception. I don't know. Well,
Yeah.
yeah. And then he collects himself with the way. And then
Yeah, he
it-
kind of
it
become very,
opens.
very careful.
Right.
Yeah.
But that is a rise of tension then to create this beautiful moment,
That's a
right?
good point. Yeah.
So in that example that you are giving, I think it is exemplifies what you are saying to Jess.
That's a good point. Yes. So I would like to say, so when those moments that he has to be very careful, it's a new moment, something new.
Right.
And now he become very careful instead of just like the previous, he said the freedom.
Right.
He has to be very careful for any new experience.
Right.
But definitely he also used his previous experience to help him to solve the current the difficulty.
Yes.
And yes, there's
His-
a tension again.
Yes. His understanding, his previous understanding of the rhythm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, helps him. So there was the new, and I think next time when he was probably encountering the same situation, will be more freely using
Maybe.
maybe
Yeah.
using a
Maybe.
knife.
Yeah.
Using the knife. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is great, and I
Thank you.
come to this as someone who knows very little about Dewey, so I'll just give that preface. And I really appreciated the clarity of the presentation and the use of the readings. I thought that was really effective. It helped me again as someone who has so little grounding in Dewey to follow. So I appreciated that. And then with that, although another caveat to that is, I work with and think through a very different kind of philosophical tradition of art and aesthetics. That's not Dewey related at all, right?
What was your tradition?
It's much more like Jacques Rancière or something like that. So there's this idea, and this goes to one of the questions that I'm curious about is a few people I've read who works on Dewey and Latin American art, specifically in Colombia, tries to lay out a claim that art is actually the kind of precondition for political life in a country like Colombia coming out of a period of massive violence. That art is what creates the conditions for a specific mode of politics. She won't say liberal democracy, that this is Doris Summer, very well known Latin Americanist, but that's what she's thinking. So she kind of conflates politics with liberal democracy, and that's a problem in and of itself, but we can leave that for another moment. But I think this idea of art as the precondition for politics that she grounds in Dewey, which wouldn't make sense in many other traditions that are much more common in Latin America. That was really interesting. And then hearing your step-by-step breakdown, I thought that was helped me see how Doris Summer would get there. It's like, oh, okay, so she's making all these moves, and now that she doesn't lay out in the book, and now I'm seeing, okay, I see how she could get from A to B. So I really appreciate that. And so couple things that I wanted to ask to hear more about is this. You had a quote that was it was rhythm of loss of integration with the environment.
Yeah.
This was in the conscious engagement part. And this goes to some of the other questions that we were talking about earlier. Is this kind of negative sense, right? So something has to be out of balance in order for these processes that take place, right? So you can't have conscious engagement if everything's obviously in this mode of harmony. Things won't stay in the mode of harmony. But I want to get if Dewey gives any kind of indications or explanations of what are the conditions of things being coming out of balance, right? How do we understand? Because a problem is never a problem as such, right? You have to be a framework for something to be perceived as a problem. So what are the conditions for something to be perceived as out of harmony with nature in order for this negative tension to arise so that we can even have this conscious engagement, how could we even get to this last step, right? This B, conscious engagement, which is the necessary step to get to C. What's the conditions for recognizing things are out of balance so we can have that conscious engagement? I don't know if that makes sense. Again, someone who works with continental tradition trying to speak in analytical terms, I'm sure I'm doing very poorly. That's one of my questions. I have others too, but I imagine maybe that's enough there.
It's a very nice, very good question. What will be the conditions? Well, let me see how to put it away. First of all, I think I could find Dewey was said for most of adults. I like the quote. He said that the childhood sometimes will become, or the experience become too heavy a burden on us. We will all know those things, that it just stops us from moving on, stopping us from regaining the balance. And for him, as educator, he says you should look at the so you should look at the past experience or the difficult the tension that you had before, not as a disruption, but rather as a continuity in the longer process of growth. And he said there will be a double change. That is, once you be able to face the tension, the difficulty, the obstacles in a continuous, rather disruptive way, you will be able to see both the change of the new situation change in your combining the past experience. And out of these past experience, you as the subject also will experience the new change. So in that sense, I always think Dewey is a very a humanistic, the educator, was trying to us to not to shy away or run away from the past. Rather, he say, take the past, but also move on. So I think, but when it comes to the how will be the conditions, well, I think something with the hope, definitely it is. The second thing I think was important is to do thing before you think. So for the he was in the tradition of he was in the group of the classical pragmatism, and the term pragmatism knows the pragma actually means the practice. So the practice, or say the action prior to any theoretical reflection. So as long as you try to be adjusted to something to be accommodating the difficulties, there will be the hope and there will be opportunities for new experience. So the condition I would say first hope, the second is to action, to do. And the third, well, that's also for Dewey important, is not just do, but do it intellectually. There was also emotionally. There's always reason and the emotion involved in your activity. So that's why in my first reading, it says the rhythm is a ordered the operation. The order is very important because if you do something out of order, you probably will be trapped into another kind of difficulty. So do something, respond something in order. It's another important conditions for you to overcome the difficulties. Yeah. If you have something to add.
Oh, well, actually, yeah, I mean, so, I mean, he builds on this sort of like these sort of biological processes, right? So like the sort of problem side of the rhythm is, hunger, thirst, exhaustion, right? These things that the organism has to strive to overcome and rebalance. Although, the resources available to many organisms are relatively limited, right? And the enculturated human being is not that different in the sense that they are also, navigating their environment now, not just by instinct, but by, a quite sophisticated set of practices and habits. And I think the sort of fundamental characterization of the problem of a problem for Dewey is when those practices and habits hit a wall, right? They run out. They fail to guide the organism smoothly, right? And that can be because the conceptual resources available to the organism are inadequate, or it just could be that they're encountering a feature of the natural or social environment that just they're not prepared to react to, right? And those are the kinds of things that generate a problem, right? And depending on the circumstances and the tendencies of this particular person, the response might be it might be inquiry, right? Might be trying to like scientifically figure out what to do. It might be just to sort of like blindly rush through it until the problem is over, right? In which case they sort of don't learn or grow at all. Or it could be to sort of channel that to channel that disequilibrium, channel that disturbance into some kind of expression, right? And that's the artistic way of responding. Yeah.
Thank you.
That's helpful. There.
I guess that's what I have a comment, but because it was definitely a really nice lecture, and it's also kind of interesting that like looking in the book that's probably art art as experience. It's kind of interesting how you kind of use your own like recent experience from like the different art you've seen while you're so it's kind of interesting. It kind of goes both ways. And it is interestingly similar to I think the last lecture Dewey lecture we had, which is it kind of had the same. I've never read Dewey myself, so like for me it kind of looks like a dialectic, and it's interesting how he uses the pattern in science, but and he was using it to it kind of reconcile the difference between a natural and social science, but it also seems from your lecture it seems to be a part of art as well, and so I find that interesting. And I guess I do have a question. So
Please.
it's a little bit of a silly one, but you're saying that philosophy begins in wonder and ends in understanding.
It's Dewey saying, not I'm saying.
Yeah, you're right. But so I'm curious. So would Dewey think that art commentary would be philosophy? Because for example, Rembrandt, it's just looking at it. I just all I see is just sort of this wondrous painting. The thing is like, but then when you commentary on it, it seems to like put it into understanding. So I'm wondering if that would be that'd be considered philosophy or not.
So you say the question is, the art what?
Would art commentary be considered philosophy?
Art commentary be considered as philosophy? Oh, that's also a good question. There are two things. The first one you said also the previous the lecture by my colleague Suning, probably.
No, I think you're thinking of a talk by Artaud Charpentier, the one about temporality and social science.
I think it was.
Siwan, I guess.
Oh, Siwan?
Siwan?
Yeah.
Was it by Siwan?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, Siwan Yang.
Yeah, Siwan Yang. Yeah.
Oh yeah. But in any case, I think and I liked what the John McDermott, the book, he mentioned that anyone who is true to the spirit of philosophy will be able to see that the current experience always comes prior to try to articulate the structure of the meaning or the structure of any idea, because your experience is a foundation, or is always a living nature, the origin, the source for the later, say, reflection, theorization. Yeah, so in that sense, I think the one you mentioned, that making connection to your own experience, I think that's all Dewey is teaching us to do. So that's for your comment. And the second is, yeah, for the art, yes, naturally, well, the chapter he just talked about the art criticism. I highly recommend you read it. And actually, I coming from Fudan, we have the Department of Aesthetics and Philosophy of Art, and I think for Dewey, art is, when he talks about philosophy of art, he doesn't not take or treat philosophy of art as just another branch genre of applied philosophy. It's not just an application of philosophical idea to art. He takes art very seriously in terms of he think those that were implicit in philosophy, actually you can find a much fuller, more emotional, more direct expression in artwork. So something you might not be able to understand in theoretical the summarization, but you can find the fully expressed in, say, Van Gogh or the Cézanne's art. So in that sense, art is at the essence. And for a aesthetician, a philosopher of art, he should be able to read and lead, to guide the audience to see what is at essence of art. And he or she should be someone who will be able to do the critique, that is, to the judgment of something is good, something is not good, something is missing, something is really expressive. So in that sense, you are doing the criticism of art. So yes, art criticism is a philosophy in that sense. Yeah.
Also, I think it's the final chapter of Experience in Nature, he describes philosophy itself as a form of criticism,
Yeah.
in the sense of art criticism.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah, that was
The criticism of criticism.
the criticism of criticism. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that.
I think referring to those paper cuts by Matisse, which I wasn't familiar with at all.
Oh.
I kept thinking of, you were talking about, you weren't sure, where does rhythm fit in Dewey's ideas? And I was thinking of the relationship between paper cuts and Matisse's dancers, right?
Oh yeah, the dancers.
Right. And so what's the sense, what does that tell us about rhythm, and what's the kind of continuity and novelty between the paper cuts and his dancers, especially because there's a sense in the dancers, there's the frame, right? The dancers are trying to move in the heads tilting in the painting, right, to kind of fit in the frame of the painting that Matisse is creating. In the paper cuts, the frame, you're essentially destroying all these other frames to create this new artwork, right? So there's this the sense of this framing that kind of seems key to the creation of rhythm across these very, very different kind of modes of expression in art. So I thank you for showing the paper cuts. I had no idea.
Oh no, you make good point. Could you say a little bit more with the framing? I know that the joy of life, the dancers, I saw actually in it in person in the Barnes Foundation.
Okay.
Yeah. So you're saying the framing there was you saying Matisse was like drawing the dancers in a circle?
Yeah, the one with the dancers. I think I have to look. Well, I have to look. But I remember, like in the top, right? The folks who are dancing at the top are bending their heads to try to stay in the frame of the painting, right?
Okay.
Right?
Oh yeah, like this. Yeah.
So it's like and I think part of the head of one of the people dancing is actually kind of cut off, right? So there's this sense where people are trying to force themselves to be in this painting.
Yeah.
Whereas like a paper cut, if you're cutting things out of paper, you're taking these things that have this nice frame and you're purposefully destroying it and creating this new sense of framing device, right? So it's like there's these kind of tension in modes of understanding the frame, where one, the desire is to fight with all your will to stay within the frame, right here.
Yeah.
So that you see that people are fighting so hard.
Yeah, the one like
that's
close
such
to
a
you.
natural move, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's going against, right? That's, you're out of balance there to try to fit within this frame, and then one of the people's heads is cut off, and then these paper cuts, it's like I don't know, kind of like a hyperbolic version of the same logic applied to, right, creating something out of these other frames.
Oh,
I don't know, it just seems
Yeah.
very, again, really,
I think that makes sense. It was the
it's
like
not
the
well thought out, to be clear. It's just something.
yeah, it could be yeah. And also you're right. And another thing is I think for the Matisse, he was always trying to. He said, "I'm not to." Usually, when people talks about the color, you draw the boundary and put the color into it. And he said, no, that was not something I'm trying to do. I want to just paint directly with color. So there was also something he was saying about color. And actually, Dewey, in art experience, made a comment of this, of saying, he said, usually we would take line and color as a form instead of the expression. But he said, actually, in the case of the Matisse and the other artists, it was not that the dichotomy between the form and emotion. It was more of the purpose of what you're trying to express. Sometimes the color can also be used as an expression instead of the form. Yeah.
Okay. Well, this has been a lovely discussion. Thank you so much for your talk. Please join me in thanking Jia Chen.
Yeah. Thank you.
Right.